Welcome to another 30-minute meal prep. I've got an ambitious to-do list today, but I'm hopeful that I can get it done because none of it involves turning on my oven. I'm planning to make a healthy breakfast, an easy lunch, and a snack that I can grab from the fridge so that my whole week will be a little easier. So I'm gonna go ahead and start my timer and get started. The first thing I'm making today is a batch of homemade almond milk. I'm starting with 1 cup of almonds, which I've been soaking in some water, and soaking your almonds helps their nutrients get absorbed a little better, and it releases an enzyme that helps improve your digestion. If you forget to soak your almonds, that's okay. I've made almond milk plenty of times without using soaked almonds. It's just a little harder on your blender and you don't get that extra nutrient boost. And now I've just drained that soaking water and rinsed off my almonds and they're ready to blend. Now I'm adding those soaked almonds to the blender, along with 4 cups of water. Now we just have to blend it. In this blender, it takes about a minute for the almonds to get creamy, and now I'm just gonna take off the lid. To strain your almond milk, you can use a fine mesh strainer like this one. But for an extra smooth result, I actually like to use a nut milk bag that looks like this. To strain out the pulp, I'm just going to pour this blended mixture into my nut milk bag. This is my favorite way to make a really smooth and silky non-dairy milk. I'm trying to squeeze out every last drop of the almond milk so that I get the most bang for my buck. And also, it's going to leave the remaining almond pulp that's in this bag as dry as possible. Now I'm just going to transfer this milk into a container so I can store it in my fridge. Okay, to be as efficient as possible, I am gonna make an easy snack using that leftover almond pulp from making our almond milk. I'm going to add it back into my blender. You don't even have to rinse it out. And we're gonna make a batch of almond pulp hummus. We are adding that pulp just back into the blender. Now I'm adding a 1/2 cup of raw tahini. Mine is pretty thick because it's been in the fridge. I like to use raw tahini because it has a more mild flavor than the traditional roasted kind. Now I'm adding a 1/4 cup of lemon juice, a tablespoon of ground cumin. My tablespoon doesn't fit in my spice jar, so I have to use 3 teaspoons. A 1/2 teaspoon of salt, a 1/4 cup of olive oil. The almond pulp has very little fat left over in it, so I'm adding a little olive oil to help with the texture. And then I'm also adding a 1/4 cup of water. And now we just have to blend it. Feel free to stop and scrape down the sides as needed to make sure everything gets mixed in, but this makes a really nice, thick hummus. At this point, you can taste and adjust as needed. This makes quite a bit of hummus, so if you don't think you're gonna use it all this week, you can freeze whatever you won't use and thaw it for later. Next, I'm going to be meal prepping a recipe that comes from my second book, No Excuses Detox, and I'm making the crunchy Thai salad. Now, I love this dressing recipe because it's creamy, but it's dairy-free, so it's a great option if you miss dairy and you want some creaminess in your salads. And this is also a great recipe to prep when it's the winter months and it's a little colder because it has plenty of ginger in it, which warms you up from the inside out. To make this dressing, I'm starting with a 1/2 cup of almond butter. The recipe actually calls for sunflower butter to make it nut-free, but almond butter is what I have on hand today. You can use peanut butter if you prefer, or cashew butter if you have that instead. And now I'm adding 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar, a 1/4 cup of lime juice. You can also use lemon juice if you prefer. And I'm adding a 1/4 cup of olive oil. If you're trying to cut back on oil, you could also use water instead. 2 cloves of garlic. I'm using roughly 2 inches of peeled ginger, a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, 1/4 teaspoon of crushed red pepper flakes, 2 tablespoons of tamari, which is a gluten-free soy sauce. And since we're making a double batch, I am adding 6 tablespoons of raw honey. And now I'm adding a 1/2 cup of water. And now it's time to blend it. Okay, now I'm just gonna taste it to make sure I like it. Oh, so good. This dressing may seem a little thin at first, but it's going to thicken up in the fridge. Okay, I just rinsed out my blender, and while it's still out on the counter, I thought I'd go ahead and make an easy breakfast for the week. If you haven't tried my chocolate chia pudding, this is the time to do it. What I love about this recipe is it's naturally sweetened with fruit. You can make as much or as little as you want to, and today I'm going to show you 2 different ways that you can make it in advance. The first way to make this pudding ahead of time is to make a chocolate milk basically in your blender. Each batch of chocolate chia pudding calls for 3/4 of a cup of almond milk, so I'm using 1.5 cups here to make a double batch. Then you'll need to add 2 tablespoons of cocoa powder for every serving that you're making. I'm adding a 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla extract. And for sweetness, I'm adding medjool dates, but make sure you remove the pit from the center before you add them to your blender. And for each serving of pudding that you make, you'll want to use about 3 to 4 dates, and you can just taste this as you go. Now we just have to blend it. To make the chia pudding, you'll add 2 tablespoons of chia seeds to each serving. And then you can just pour in that chocolate milk evenly between the 2 containers. I like to use a whisk to help incorporate the chia seeds into the liquid. These will thicken up overnight in the fridge and will be ready to eat for you in the morning. The other way to make this pudding in advance is to add all of the ingredients, including the chia seeds, into the blender and blending them until smooth. Now you may want to stop and scrape down the sides to make sure that all of the chia seeds get blended, so you're left with a smooth and silky chocolate pudding. Now be sure to stop and taste your chia pudding as you work, because when the chia seeds are blended, they can be a little more overpowering in flavor. So you might want to add an extra tablespoon of maple syrup or cocoa powder to help hide their flavor even more. And once it tastes the way you want it to, go ahead and pour it into glass jars and store them in the fridge so that they can thicken up. The last thing I have on my to-do list here is to chop up some vegetables for that crunchy Thai salad. Today I'm chopping up a head of romaine, some purple cabbage, shredding some carrots, chopping a few green onions, and also chopping up some fresh cilantro, but I'm storing them separately so that I can use them in other dishes during my week too. If you haven't tried my egg roll in a bowl, then that's another great way to use some extra shredded cabbage. And you can change up your salads this week by adding different toppings. So if you practice proper food combining, you may want to add some sliced almonds, or if you feel like you need a little more protein on your salad, you can add chicken or fish, or if you're vegan and want some more protein, you can add some cooked chickpeas or lentils or whatever you happen to have on hand. Okay, my timer has gone off and I feel like I got a lot done in 30 minutes. I've got lunch ready to go, I have my chocolate pudding in the fridge for breakfast, and I have that hummus that I can eat with sliced veggies whenever I need a snack. I hope this has been helpful for you and that it might inspire you to get in your kitchen and see what you can get done in 30 minutes. For more healthy recipes, be sure to visit my website, detoxinista.com, and I will see you here again soon.